Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanderson, Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have Richard Scotti. Richard Scotti is a former Clark County District Court judge, former Clark County chairman for the Republican Party, and he has a whole bunch of different committees and things that he's done. We're going to let him talk. But Richard Scotti is running he's a candidate for Nevada Secretary of State. Jim.
Okay, well, I don't have any rants.
Really?
No.
Because it's not Saturday?
No, I just don't.
Have a rant? Saturdays he's usually have.
Oh, I can rant all day long about afternoon traffic in Las Vegas, but that would take us way too many hours.
What about what happened to you yesterday?
Yeah, that kind of is what it is.
Okay.
Actually, I just want to get to the point because I don't want to delay Mr. Scotti's time. First off, I just want to say thank you to both of our guests on Saturday. I do want to thank Louis Snyder for coming on. I wish more people would come on that had opposing point of views and gave their point of view versus our point of view.
And we let them speak, too.
Yeah, and then so we can just have a discussion about it.
Right.
And I think that would help a lot towards educating the listening public and also the voters. With that being said, I'm kind of stumbling over my words because honestly, it's really hard for me to talk right now because the person sitting next to my right, I've known for a number of years.
It's kind of like the executive board, huh?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for this individual, and so I just want to make that very clear because unlike some of our more liberal, fake, I guess they're supposedly journalists. I'm not a journalist. I just give my opinion. And
so you're a columnist then?
Right. And so my thing is that I just want everybody to understand that I'm going to try to be as non-biased as I can in this, but it's going to be tough because I do have a lot of respect for Richard, Mr. Scotti. And the first thing I wanted to say is, well, I don't know Jim Marchant that well. I have met him a few times. I have listened to him speak a few times.
Who's also running for Secretary of State.
Yeah. And, honestly, here's the thing that really upsets me about, I'm not going to blame it on the politicians. I always go back to the voters. There's a reason why bad people hold public office. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad person in particular, but in general, the public always complains about politicians. I'm like, well, if you don't do your research and hold them accountable, then you deserve what you get. Now, Mr. Marchant is speaking in front of a group, QAnon, which is on the FBI's domestic terrorist list. And he's trying to say, oh, well, I didn't know that. I just want to speak in front of as many Nevadans as I can. We got to be really careful about, who are you going to, so you're going to speak in front of a bunch of terrorists? Really? Is that really seriously the person we want representing us?
Sounds more like an opportunist than somebody with moral character.
Yeah, and the few times I've met him, that's just kind of how he's come across to me. Huh. But again, I just want to make sure everybody knows that because I do have a lot of respect for Mr. Scotti, that people don't get it misconstrued. That I'm trying to not be biased here because I do have some bias. The other thing too is that it was very disappointing to me when I saw the election results for judges. When I found out that Mr. Scotti did not win re-election. And I personally feel that a lot of the reason why he did not win is because of some criticism that he got in his courtroom about an event that happened with the Constitution. Okay, so when did that become a problem? So judges understanding the Constitution and standing up for the Constitution is now an issue in this country? We're a land of laws. If we don't follow the rule of law, we don't have a country. That's what the United States of America was built and founded on.
Excellent.
And that goes right back to what you were talking about with Lewis Snyder. I really appreciate Mr. Snyder for coming on, but you made your point very clear. If you have, because he kept saying, well, they're doing it for an abundance of caution with the children and in the child's best interest. Yeah, but they're acting outside of the Constitution. You have to follow the law.
And you're referring to the conversation that a civil judge
Yep.
cannot order a litigant
Right.
to take a drug or alcohol test.
Right, exactly.
Only a criminal judge could do that. And family court judges is not a criminal judge.
So they need to go exactly like you said. You stated it perfectly. If you have a problem with the law, go lobby the legislature, get it put in the law, and then that way the judge in that case can act constitutionally. Right. But right now they're not. Yeah.
So they're supposed to follow the law and not legislate from the bench.
Yeah. And so, in my opinion, I've known this man for a number of years, and I've watched this guy make decisions that I could tell he was uncomfortable with, but he knew that at the end of the day, he just followed the rule of law.
And you know something, and we know he's sitting right there, but we got to get his bio too before we start talking to him.
We will.
But you know something, he's running for Nevada Secretary of State.
Right.
Now, it is great to have somebody with a legal mind that's a Secretary of State. And Richard Scotti has been practicing law for over 30 years now. He sat as a district court judge, not a justice of the peace, not a municipal court judge, not a pro tem. I'm sure he probably did that over the years, but he was a district court judge for 6 years. Yeah. And that speaks volume if you want to be a Nevada Secretary of State, because you got to deal with a whole bunch of election laws, and you gotta know legalese. You can't just run to your general counsel every time something comes across your desk. You should have some type of idea, some type of mindset, and you should be able to do the job without running to somebody all the time. Because your job as a Secretary of State is to make sure that all the election laws are followed. And how could you make sure all the election laws are followed if you have no law background to begin with? So, you know what? I think that they should also amend that position, just like they did when you're running for sheriff. When everybody was running for sheriff, and then they came up with and said that, okay, you got to be a police officer for X amount of years as part of the criteria to run for sheriff. And then when Joe Bonaventure had 2 years of having his law license, became a justice of the peace, then they go, wait a minute, now we have to set some requirements. Now, if you want to be a justice of the peace, you have to be practicing law for 5 years. And I think that goes the same for Muni. And then district court is 10 years. And then appellate and supreme is 15 years. So now they had some kind of, guidelines of, what type of candidates could run for that seat. They should do the same thing with regents. we got one guy out there that's a regent right now, and he has no college experience. You should at least have 4 years of college experience, have a bachelor's degree at a minimum to be a regent who is the head of higher education. You know what I mean? How are students going to look up to you if you don't even have a bachelor's degree and you're the regent, right? So for Secretary of State, you should at least have a not practice, but at least have a law degree. That means you went through the schooling and you went and you took the test and you're a certified lawyer in the state. You don't have to be a practicing attorney, but at least have one. So that's what I think that a Secretary of State criteria should at least have a law degree to be a Secretary of State. And not only that, Richard Scotti, he was the chair of the Clark County Republican Party because, unfortunately, this constitutional seat is a partisan seat. I don't think it should be, but it is, and so it is. He sat on as a chairman for the Clark County Republican Party. He was also on the Board of Governors for many years, too. So the man knows what he's doing. I don't even think we have to interview him now. I think we just said enough.
I was gonna talk to you guys later. I was gonna say,
keep on with all this while I step out, okay?
You should go out and smoke a cigarette or something when we finish up. But do you have anything else, Jim?
No.
So with that said, Richard Scotti, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. You know what? One thing I wanted to say really quickly is Jim's talking about he's speaking before shady groups. I'm here speaking before you guys. What does that mean?
We're a shady group. You know why we're a shady group? Because we stand up for our convictions. We do things that people think about doing but don't actually say. Yeah. We put our name to the doggone articles instead of this anonymous that everybody else does. Yeah. And we stand up for things that people don't don't have the gusto to do.
Great.
And I think that's the problem. Like stand up to corruption in our judiciary and with our politicians. Who wants to do that?
Right.
Right. But
sometimes it's hard decisions. So
exactly.
Also your opening, you said that I'm running for Secretary of State. I want to let everybody know that tomorrow there's going to be a really big press release that's going to say a lot of things about what I'm planning to do. Steve, I've known you for a very long time. I wanted to come here and let you know what I am planning to do.
Appreciate that.
I am planning to run for Nevada Secretary of State.
Bravo! Now tell us about yourself.
Also, Jim mentioned how I am an ardent supporter of the Constitution. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, right? And I took an oath to defend it, even if there are going to be some hard decisions. I brought it with me because I carry it everywhere. But I am going to defend this document.
You carry a Constitution like I carry my 380.
Okay. This is always going to be
which is part of the Constitution as well.
Yeah. Right. And even though I'm not reading it every day, I know what it says. I know it has 4,000 words in it, which is one of the shortest effective constitutions in history. Right. But I carry it to remind myself of the importance of those values, the values that my dad taught me. My dad was a Marine. Right. That he fought in Vietnam and once always. And, he passed.
But he's up there in heaven guarding the gates.
Yeah. Thank you. He is. He's up there and he's seriously injured, Purple Heart. Did I tell you he was injured and recovered and he wanted to go back and fight for his men? So he went back after he was injured. Got injured again, Purple Heart, Agent Orange, leukemia, adult onset leukemia, and he passed away. He taught me, thank you. And the great, maybe I told you about the great service and funeral that we had for him. He taught me my values. He taught me respect, right? For family, for God, for country, for the Constitution.
For the core.
Right. He taught me that. So this is the document that I take very dear. When someone comes in my courtroom, when someone comes and talks to me, I'm going to remind them. Now, yes, some hard decisions. Can I give 3 examples of where I stood up for the Constitution in my court? Obviously, I stood up for due process. And I had that case where the gentleman had the Nazi tattoos, right? the tough decision was to make sure he got a fair trial. I take due process very seriously.
So you acted under the 14th Amendment.
I acted on the 5th and the 14th Amendment, and I protected his due process rights. And I had ordered that makeup had to be applied to cover up his tattoos. Very difficult thing for me to do because I looked at the man and I knew he was a racist. I didn't want to bias the jury, but the point is, I went through 2.5 jury panels. That was costing the county money, all right? And every single juror that I voir dired said, he must be guilty. He's sitting there. Look at him. He must be guilty. Now, it's my job as a judge, despite what I think of somebody, is to make sure that justice is followed, all right? That's one example. Another example, which I think is one that I'm very proud of, is I stood up for the Review Journal's First Amendment rights to get Metro documents relating to the 1 October shooting, to get them fast, to have transparency, to get them at a reasonable price, and to make sure that they had their First Amendment rights access to these documents.
Who was the attorney representing the RJ in that case?
Maggie McClatchy was representing. Do you know her?
Extremely good attorney. That's my attorney.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes.
So you knew it was her. Okay. Yes. Anyway, and then, the culmination of my career as a judge, I got to make a separation of powers decision. I got to rule and remind the legislature of Nevada that you cannot be a lawmaker at the same time you are the law enforcer. Fundamental principle to our governance, fundamental principle that our founding fathers relied on so dearly and the foundation of our country. Unfortunately, a lot of people in government forget that. Those are 3 critical decisions where I got to support the Constitution of the United States. And I hope when I am elected again, but in a different capacity, I am going to vigorously enforce this. Because one of the roles of the Secretary of State as the chief officer for elections, state and federal, is to make sure that the laws are faithfully obeyed, to make sure that the Secretary of State understands election law, to make sure that we're going to follow it within the confines of this document, the Constitution of the United States right here. I guarantee you that I'm going to do that.
Now give us a bio.
All right, thanks. Well, I have 30 years practice as an attorney, primarily as a business law attorney. I have 10 years as an owner, 10 years as an owner of my own business. I was a partner in my own law firm, 6 years as a district court judge. I have the business experience and the judicial experience to hold this position. This position requires somebody with a legal mind, somebody with a judicial mind, somebody with business experience. I have that business experience. And here's some examples. I've probably, Steve and Jim, this is not an exaggeration, I've probably handled any kind of business issue that you can envision coming before me. Corporate issues, LLC, LLP, sole proprietorships, closely held corporations, partnerships. I've handled it all. I've handled disputes between shareholders, officers, directors. I've handled disputes between creditors and debtors. I've handled contract disputes, fraud disputes, corporate disputes involving dissolution, corporate qualification, article bylaws disputes, registration, licensing, administrative law, employment discrimination, cases like restrictive covenants, covenants not to compete. I mean, everything. I've handled those. And then also as running my own business, I've learned, you know what I've learned? That businesses aren't just licenses. They're not just numbers. They're not just names. What they are people. These are people running this business, a lot of small businesses. And they worry about payroll every day. They worry about accounts receivable. They worry about accounts payable. They worry about whether they're going to get enough money to feed their family. They worry about the services and the goods that they're providing to people in the community. They worry about paying their taxes. These are all the things that people in business have to deal with. I appreciate that. With my 30 years business experience as a business lawyer, real estate, construction, complex commercial, 10 years running a business in a law firm, and 6 years as a district court judge handling numerous business disputes. Now I am married for 34 years, 2 grown kids. My daughter is a manager of a firm that's involved in product research. My son is a lawyer here in town. He is a criminal defense attorney primarily at a firm. He's working really hard. I'm proud of both of my kids, proud of my wife. I have a loving wife and loving family that 100% supports me in my decision to run for office here. I came to... let me just finish with this if I could, because this is important. I want the folks to know out there. I've been a Clark County resident and working as a lawyer and married here in Clark County for 30 years. And I'm proud of that. Yeah, I have 3 cats. They're my wife. No, I'm not a cat person. I'm not a cat person. I'm not a pet person. I treat my pets.
Don't say that too loud that you're not a pet person.
Well, you know what? They make you happy when you're lonely. You know, when no one's home, sure. But that's a weird question. I'm a pet person. But yeah, what else can I tell? You know, I love the law. I have a passion for what I've done over the years. I had a passion working as chairman, and I really enjoyed it, chairman of the Clark County Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And you know how hard we worked to bring people together for a couple years. Do you know people? You know some people call me a rhino. And people out there, I know that maybe some of you that don't know what that term means. It means Republican in name only. Mm-hmm. Do you know I started in politics, probably spent 100 hours as a precinct walker for Ronald Reagan in Long Beach in 1980. Oh, wow. And he won. I went to Century Plaza Hotel, didn't get a chance to shake his hand. That's where it all started. That's where it started. And you know what happened many years later? I became a precinct coordinator for our party. And then I became chairman of our party. And then, you know what? I was an alternate delegate to the National Republican Convention in 2008. And then also as a guest in 2012. I'm not a rhino. I'm fighting for constitutional values. You can guarantee that you're not going to have anybody as a stronger constitutionalist than me.
Well, you know, Richard, it's interesting that you've been called the rhino. Here's my thing. Like, when I get into discussions with people, Richard, I've been called everything from a rhino. 1 minute, I'm a right-wing Christian extremist. And then my next answer, I am a left-wing socialist communist. And then I'm a rhino. Like, I've been called, like, in the same 5-minute conversation. You know what that means? But you know what that means, though? That means that, like, you weigh both sides.
Oh, I'm
I'm
fair. I study policy.
This document, they weren't all hardcore Republicans. They weren't all the obviously communists or socialists. Yeah. But if you just follow that, you're fine.
Thank you. And that's what I do. I follow the law, follow the Constitution. You have to be a person of integrity. And if I'm registered a Republican, I have certain values that I think appeal to the primary voters, and I want to make sure that people understand my principles. And I hope you give me a chance to talk in a little bit more detail about my thoughts on election law here in Nevada.
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad, because that was where I was going to pivot to, is because like this whole, and I understand COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in everything, and whether you agree it's real or wrong or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't want to get that far into that. But as far as actually following the Constitution, like this past presidential election, right? Mm-hmm. So we had the courts all over the place with the mail-in ballots.
We can talk about those.
Yeah, a good example would be Pennsylvania. Well, as long as it comes in within, it was something crazy, like 2 weeks after. I mean, how honestly does that work? I mean, what does specifically the Constitution say when it comes to mail-in ballots? Because whether we like them or not, it seems like that's going to kind of be the future. So, like, what is the Constitution? How does the Constitution
the Constitution actually has delegated the authority for running elections to the states.
Right.
And so you're going to have different views, different procedures in each of the states. Here in Nevada, we have permanent universal mail-in ballots now. Right? There's criticism and there's positive comments. The main reason why people are concerned about mail-in ballots is voter impersonation. Right? We want to make sure that the person filling out that ballot is who he or she is supposed to be.
Right.
Now, and I'll get to for a moment. I'll come back to it.
Oh, yeah.
The Republican Party historically has been the party of inclusiveness, the party of expanding the right to vote. And I'd like to talk about that in a moment if I could. But let me answer your question first. But I wanted to preface that. We're a party of inclusiveness. But we also have to be guarded, right? But historically, we are the party that want people to participate in our republic, to vote, to be knowledgeable, informed voters and get out there and vote. That's how our system works. We've been supporting that. Now, mail-in ballots. Yeah, there's some problems. Here's what the proponents of mail-in ballots say. That mail-in ballots just don't show up anywhere. You're not going to, in theory, just find them lying around the street. Mail-in ballots are going to go to active voters, right? So that's where they go, all right? And then the active voter opens it, all right? Presumably it's the person who's supposed to get it, right? Now, that person who gets the ballot has to check the box that, you are who you say you are, right? Yeah. And then you know that there are extreme penalties if you're committing fraud. Another thing that most people maybe don't know is it's impossible to counterfeit those documents, right? They have barcodes on them, right? And they're virtually impossible to copy as well, right, given the whole structure in which they're printed, right? And then on top of that, if you are a person who doesn't receive your ballot, you can call up, you can complain, and they're going to then go searching for that ballot that's missing. So people that are proponents of mail-in ballots make those arguments. And then, of course, we have signature verification process. So a lot of people believe that there are enough safeguards there to make sure that our mail-in ballot system has integrity. Now, personally, I think we need to do a lot more. I think we need stronger signature verification. All right, we had these Agilis machines that were doing the signature verification, and the whole thing with the manufacturer settings was 50% probability of match, and I guess Joe Gloria went down to 40%. And what that did is that led a lot of signatures that weren't really closely matched to get through the system. Now I would bump that up. I'd bump it up to 70%. And yeah, you know what that's going to do? There's going to be more failures. And more failures mean you need to have more manpower to review those. And I would find the manpower. We need to find the manpower in our budget, or in the Secretary of State's budget. I'm not there yet, all right, to check and verify signatures. That's one thing that I would do to make there more integrity for the mail-in ballot system.
Do you know their budget?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. It's $20 million is the Secretary of State budget. And you know what they generate from that? They generate right now I think it's about $120 million they generate from license fees and penalties. So it's a really good arm of the government. And that's another reason why you need someone with business experience to run that department, because you have a budget to watch over. You got the fees that you're imposing. You have the revenue. You have a staff of about 145 individuals. Wow. You have 8 different departments with department heads. It's. What
are the different departments, do you know?
Yeah, well, there's operations, there's elections, there's recordings, there's administration, there's securities. Do you know the Secretary of State? And there's a couple others. Secretary of State is responsible for applying and enforcing securities law, in addition to election law.
Explain
in
that.
addition to explain securities law. Well, securities are basically, if you talk about stock certificates that we have a lot of publicly owned corporations here in Nevada. And so if there's stock fraud, you need to protect the consumer. So and then I'm kind of dovetailing into a different issue, but we can go back for a second. Duties of the Secretary of State: notaries, sports agents, registered agents, C&E reports, maintaining the UCC Universal Commercial Code records.
For those people that don't know, C&E's campaign and expense reports.
Campaign and expense reports. Secretary of State is on a state audit board. You're also on the prison board. You're on so many boards, but there's so many. Probably 90% of all of the activities and responsibilities of the Secretary of State are legal related.
And judges are supposed to file annually their
Financial reports. Financial reports, right.
So what happens when a judge decides that he's not going to file any financial reports for 7 years?
Oh, I think it's a pretty steep fine. I think it's something like $5,000 a year. I have to double. It's pretty steep. Do you know someone who didn't? I did it. I did it.
And this has nothing to do with you.
Okay.
Okay. But I have to bring up this judge.
Okay.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, sure. I know nothing about who you're talking about. But...
So there's one family court judge,
okay,
Vincent Ochoa,
okay,
didn't file his financial disclosures for, I think it's about 5 to 7 years, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And he didn't start filing it until one of our litigants told the Secretary of State, "What are you doing? Why aren't you going after this guy? It's been 5-7 years. He hasn't filed anything."
Yeah.
So once that process was going on, then the Secretary of State people that's down there knew about it. You know what they charged him? $100.
Wow.
$100.
For each year? For
no.
Each month?
$100 total.
Wow.
Isn't that pathetic?
Okay. Well,
that's holding people accountable.
I'm not going to comment personally, but other than to say that I don't believe that's consistent with the law.
No, it's not. It's not consistent with the law at all. But this is why people get away with all this stuff.
Yeah.
We need somebody at the helm that's not going to allow this type of business to continue.
I'm not going to allow fraud to slip by. I'm not going to, you know what, as a judge, I need evidence. I need hard evidence.
Right.
In an election, I'm going to need hard evidence.
Right. Yeah.
But I guarantee you that if there's evidence of fraud, if that comes before me, that very day, I'm going to be out there stopping it. That very day, I'm going to be out there making sure people know about that fraud, making sure that we have in place protocols to not let it continue.
See, I'm going to, I'll get to my question for you, and this is a very general question for you just in a minute. But when Steve said he doesn't think that the Secretary of State should be a partisan race, I actually disagree. And here's why. Honestly, okay, let me back up a second. Honestly, I think most races should not be partisan. But the reason why I like that the Secretary of State's is that, it shows like, it's kind of like judges, right? Like, okay, so they're supposedly nonpartisan, but anybody who really gets to know judges, which, by the way, for all the viewers and listeners, actually start paying attention to judges and do your research on them, and you can tell if they're Democrat or Republican. I'm not saying that should sway who you vote for, but I'm just saying that, like, it gives it's just more transparency, if that makes sense. But for my question to you is,
sure.
So Richard,
Okay.
like, you are one of the most successful people I know, and one of the brightest people I know. So here's my thing, and I'm not teasing you about your age, because trust me, you're.
Do you know how old I am?
No, I have no idea. All I know is you're probably a little bit older than me, but I hope I'm as bright as you.
Just a tad bit older than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Long story short, though, in all honesty, because I've known you so long, I like to tease with you once in a while and stuff like that. But anyway, like you've been a judge, you've done all this stuff, and the way you just explained the role of the Secretary of State, that's a huge job. Like, why take on all that responsibility? You're a very successful attorney. Both of your whole family is an awesome family. Why not just stay in private practice and make a boatload of money and call it a day? Like, why do you want to take on all that responsibility? What drives you to really want to keep serving the state of Nevada the way you do?
Thank you. Well, public service has been in my heart for so long, so long, and I want to continue to serve. People have asked me to step up and run for this position.
Nice.
And it's not something that I had a strong desire to do maybe 2 years ago, but as we've gone through these issues with election fraud and loss of integrity, I realize this is an important opportunity, a critical opportunity, the time now to stand up to the extent that there's tyranny, to stand up, right, to make sure that we restore election integrity here, to stand up and rescue the Constitution. We need to do these things because we're running out of time. And I want to do that. I want to serve. I want to protect those values. This is an opportunity to make sure that we rebuild confidence in our entire democratic system. We need people to feel confident, not just one side of the fence. Right. We all have to feel confident in our system. I want to be a person that's achieving that. And that's what compelled me to really push forward in this.
So another question I have for you is, and this is like a hot button issue that gets brought up every election cycle, is about voter ID. So should you have to show not a driver's license per se, but a state issued ID if you go to the ballot box? Like, why do people continually on one side of the aisle keep saying that if you do that, it's voter suppression? But yet those same people, for the most part, on one side of the aisle, have no problem showing that state-issued ID or driver's license to get their welfare benefits.
Right.
I don't get it.
Right. It
frustrates me.
And those same people that don't want voter ID want you to show your vaccination COVID card.
Right. I mean, I honestly.
Well, it's not a difficult thing to do to have some form of identification.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, just some
What's
form.
wrong with that? The first thing a cop asks you is driver's license, registration,
Well, if you
military
drive,
ID,
a lot of
something.
people don't drive. Of course, a lot of people don't drive.
State-issued ID.
And of course, that's one thing we have to leave up to the legislature. Secretary of State doesn't get to make that decision. It's the legislature. And that's where our republic, is in play. We need, and I could do that as Secretary of State, is lobby our legislators, lobby the people to come forward and explain their views, explain why it might be important to have some form of identification, whether it's a driver's license, social security card, passport, certificate of citizenship when non-citizens go through the naturalization process. Or even, I might even go so far as to say a utility bill. There has to be something to add a little bit more integrity, a little bit more accuracy to our election system. And a lot of people out there, Steve and Jim, are going to say, Republicans, if I'm a Republican and I'm taking that view, I must want to suppress the vote. I must worry about what some of these people that are voting are going to do. I may not want people that where it may be difficult, they say, to get ID to come and vote. All right? Well, no, that couldn't be further from the truth. And I want to back up, if I could, for a moment, to where, well, we all know that when our country was formed, unfortunately, it was just rich white men that would get around the table and they would vote and they would have groups and pretty much tell everyone else how to
be
vote.
A property owner.
We changed that, right? We changed that, right? Well, let's jump forward to Lincoln. Let me tell a story about Lincoln, all right? So he wasn't guaranteed to win his election in 1864, right? We were still in the midst of the Civil War. He had plans to end slavery. He had plans to allow the blacks to vote, right? But he knew he needed to keep the Union together. We needed to win the Civil War. Before that, he needed to win election. So what did he do? He made Nevada a state. He made Nevada a state. We're battle-born. Most people know that, right? I don't know how many people know the mechanics behind it. Those extra representatives, all right, were then able to support Lincoln. And all said,
we had come in as a non-slave state.
And plus, with
throw off the Missouri balance, right?
Right. And then people saw, right? They saw that he was going to win. They saw that the movement to free the slaves was going to win. They saw we were going to win the Civil War. They saw that we were going to get enough votes to pass 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, all right, to allow the blacks to vote, all right? That's what the Republicans did. Republicans 100% voted in favor of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. All right? You know what else the Republicans did? And this is why we're the party of inclusiveness. All right? Jump forward again to 1920. All right? We supported, well, let's just go through history. Women's right to vote. All right? We supported eliminating the poll tax. I'm not going to give all the dates. During World War II, we supported eliminating the restrictions on Chinese voting. I think it was 1920 when we allowed American Indians to vote.
Republicans also supported NAACP.
Fantastic, we did, and then go up towards the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 1965. A great majority of Republicans supported those. You know what those did? Got rid of the poll tax, got rid of literacy tests. All right?
And you know who the biggest opponent of that was Lyndon Baines Johnson. And the only reason why and this is documented in history, and it's one of the most famous quotes ever, LBJ did not want to sign that into office, and he was the president at the time. Everybody kept pushing him to sign it, and he goes, fine, I'll sign it. And then you know what? The Democrat president signed it into law, and excuse my language, we'll have these niggers voting Democrat the next 200 years.
Wow.
Excuse my language. I don't like using the N-word, but that's historical quote.
So a couple other things, and then moving forward, of course, the 26th Amendment extended the right to vote to 18-year-olds. There was the Help American Vote Act, HAVA, where they established this particular election commission, which is a bipartisan commission that's in charge of reviewing and approving our voting machines. A hot issue right now with the Dominion voting machines. So Republicans have done so much in our history to be inclusive, to expand the right to vote. All right. So when you come to voter ID, all right, you want to expand the right to vote, but you want to be guarded. You want to make sure that the people are voting are actual citizens. All right.
And what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Nothing. And you know what? I think that there's a way to improve the integrity of the mail-in ballots, which is getting back to one of your prior questions, by allowing some sort of identification to be included with your mail-in ballots. Why can't you have that? It's just an idea off the top of my head. Say we need increased signature verification. We need more identification to help ensure. That's what it's all about. We want everybody to vote, but we want to make sure that it's citizens that are voting.
Could you tell us when a candidate runs for a judgeship, a judicial candidate?
Judgeship? Okay.
Yeah, a judicial candidate. What are the criterias as far as election laws? What do they have to follow before they could actually run, before they put their name on the ballot? What do they have to follow?
Well, financially,
and then once their name is on the ballot, what? Let me strike that.
Okay.
Strike that.
That's what we say in depositions. We go strike that as if it's going to disappear and you start over.
Well, no. I know where Steve is
before
going.
a judicial candidate starts advertising, starts putting their names on billboards, starts doing meet and greets, start to collect campaign donation, what do they have to do before they start that process?
Well, the most important thing that you need to do is open up a bank account, a campaign account. You need to get an EIN number from the Internal Revenue Service. You need to start keeping very meticulous records of every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. That's the most important thing that someone beginning a campaign needs to do.
So they have to be an election before they start doing those things, correct?
An election?
They have.
Well, you have to do it before the election. You got to do it right at the beginning. You start running.
I'm not talking about what you just said.
Okay.
You have to put your name on the ballot, is what I'm saying. You have to actually be a candidate before you start collecting donations. As a judicial candidate,
right.
Before you start collecting donations, before you start advertising for a particular seat. A judicial candidate, not an assembly or a state senate or one of those other ones, but a judicial candidate running for a judge, whether it's muni, justice, district, appellate, or supreme, they have to put their name on the ballot before they start that process.
There's a registration. There's a registration requirement. You go and put your name on the ballot and you pay the fee. I don't know what the fee is now,
but start that before they.
Steve's basically saying like you can't already start raising a bunch of money and asking for campaign contributions and then put your name on the ballot,
right?
And then hide it from your C&E report.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, you can't hide it from the C&E report. From the moment, if that's what you're asking, from the moment you start raising money, it's going to have to go on your C&E report. I don't know of any judge that tries to conceal.
I'm going to give you one.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Are
you ready?
It's your show.
In North Las Vegas, okay, they were trying to unseat municipal court judge, God rest her soul, Catherine Ramsey.
Okay.
And this always bothers me because I never got to the bottom of it.
That was pretty sad when she unexpectedly died. I knew her well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they try to unseat her. So they take the city attorney, Sandra Morgan, to run against Catherine Ramsey, which I thought that was a conflict of interest anyways, because you got a muni judge and a city attorney, and they're supposed to be working together, not on different sides of the fence, right?
Right.
Okay. I thought one had to resign before they run for that, but that's just my opinion, right? So you have a city attorney that announced her candidacy to run against a municipal court judge, but there was no election. But the city attorney was putting her face and name on billboards, having campaign donations, doing fundraising, and ironically, her campaign manager was Dave Thomas. So I went to the voter registry, which is the Clark County Voter Registry, which is Joe Gloria, and I sat down with Joe and I told him just this, and I said, "Hey, what are you going to do? This candidate, Sandra Morgan, is going against all election laws. She's raising money. She's having fundraisers. She's got billboards up. She's doing all kinds of campaigning, but there's no election." Well, this is what he said. "Well, Mr. Sampson, we don't have the resources to go out and investigate every candidate." So I picked up a binder. I said, don't worry, Joe. I did the investigation for you. Binder was about that thick. Okay. Handed it to him, showed him all the flyers, showed him the meet and greet, where it was, the times, showed him pictures of the billboards, showed him that money is being raised. Didn't do a doggone thing about it. Didn't do a doggone thing about it. And then the Supreme Court came in and said, you can't recall judges. So I've always asked Dave Thomas this, where's the money? All that money that was raised for Sandra Morgan, there is no C&E report I can't find one. So you tell me, is that fraud?
I'm not going to tell you because...
What would you say? I just painted you a big picture. Tell me, am I going crazy? Yeah. Was everything on the up and up?
Well,
if you were Nevada Secretary of State, and I came to you, and I said, Richard Secretary of State Scotti, this is what I got. I got a judicial candidate is trying to unseat a sitting judge. There's no election. There's no ballot to put your name on, so her name is not on any ballot. But yet, she's raising money. And she's advertising. What would you do?
As a judge, again,
no,
I'm trained.
As a Secretary of State.
I'm trained to look at the law and apply it to the facts.
But is the law being applied in this particular situation?
That's
what I'm saying.
You're giving me a hypothetical.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, actually, to you, I'm giving you a hypothetical. Yeah. But to me, this is real life. This actually happened. This is not a hypothetical situation. This situation actually took place. And I haven't had any remedy from it. It was never closed for me because no one told me, hey, you know what, fines replaced, sanctions happened, nothing. Just nobody never gave me an answer. Everybody runs away from this. Nobody's never approached and says, you know what, if that ever came before me, yeah. A judicial candidate that's not a judicial candidate because she's never put her name on the ballot cannot raise money, fundraise, cannot advertise. Nobody's come to me and say that.
I'm hesitant to provide an advisory opinion. All right, it's
just is it the law? Is it the law? Yes or no? That's all I'm asking. Is it the law that and this is happening?
Is it?
To other candidates are doing
money for a de facto election, right? You have to include that on a C&E report. If you fail to include it on a C&E report, then you're violating the law, and the Secretary of State would appropriately investigate that and refer it to law enforcement if it was intentional, not a mistake.
What happens if a C&E report doesn't exist?
Well, then you're fined for that. And then beyond that, if it's repeated, if it's fraudulent, other factors, it could be referred to law enforcement for appropriate action.
I think what
I don't want to say more than that.
I think
because it's hypothetical, and I'm not commenting on the Ramsey situation at all. I don't have the facts there.
I get you.
And plus it'd be conflict of interest because I knew her.
I think that doing this so long, you see all this type of corruption, and you ask yourself, why does it still exist? And the reason that it still exists is because nobody does a damn thing about it. Right. And I think,
you're fighting, so thank you for fighting for.
And I think that people that don't do anything about it, it's like Louis Schneider said when we were talking about the state bar. They go after the little guy, they don't go after big law firms, and he wants to know why. Why is a sole practitioner getting hammered, and the big law firms who's done 10 times worse, nothing's been done to them, and I think that's the problem in this state. The pick and choose who's gonna forced to follow the law and who's not going to force to follow the law, I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We need people that are going to have courage to do the right thing. And I have shown that as a judge, and I'm going to continue. You're going to not have somebody to investigate with me in this office.
Yeah. So if you are the Nevada Secretary of State, each county has their own voter registry, right? Are you going to meet with them, or are you going to like set guidelines for them that this incident that I just described don't become a domino effect, which it has, because there's a lot of judicial candidates skirt from the law, a lot of them. And are you going to make sure that this doesn't take place anymore?
Well, absolutely, Steve. Of course I'm going to do that. In fact, one of the huge responsibility of the Secretary of State is training and education and meeting with poll workers, meeting with all election officials. You have to get out there and do that. And I'll be all over the state. That's one of the reasons why I want to run, right? No, I love Nevada. I want to go around Nevada. I want to talk to people. I want to train people. Getting back to the Help America Vote Act, all right? Funding there, a lot of that act is instructing the Secretary of State to train people to make sure that we have consistency in application of our election laws. So yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do that. I'll be all over the state, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Richard, and then, with all due, just to be fair to anybody else who decides to run, and they'll get their chance when they come to the endorsement interviews. If they have the guts to show up. I'll give everybody a fair shake, but one of the reasons why I really like you, Richard, is because of my past history with you and knowing you as long as I do. My first recollection of you
was to run up to you and do a Rambo, but instead he chilled.
No, I had nothing.
There's a rap song.
Actually,
that's part of a whole rap song, though, by the way.
No, I had nothing to do with that. Actually, it was right around leading up to 2008, and it was pretty interesting. I'll just cut to the chase. That Nevada had always been technically a caucus state, but the way they ran it was very convoluted. So. Anyway, they decided, hey, we're actually going to run actual caucuses. And so they brought people in from Iowa and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
we got up to speed pretty quickly.
You and your colleague at the time, Melanie Howard, did such a good job at really organizing the precincts and getting down to the grassroots and really explaining how precincts were supposed to work and how precinct captains worked, and you did workshops, and you guys did so much grassroots work and put so much time and effort into that. And I was at that time I was such a young kid that I thought I knew a lot about politics or just how it worked. But it wasn't political. It was this is how you organize a precinct. And you guys put on training seminars, and I'd go to them, and it was so neat that both of you didn't have to do that, but you put so much time and effort.
We had to teach people Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Yes, well.
Yeah, how come you never taught David Gibbs that, by the way?
Jeez, I don't have any comments about that. But no,
I just tease him.
Don't be like Judge Michael Villani, okay? Every time we ask him a question, he has no comment because it might be before him. It could be before him.
I have no comment about his no comment.
Right. So basically what I want to say to the viewers and listeners, when Richard Scotti says that he's willing to go county by county and do these things. Like, I've seen it firsthand that, like, this guy he just works so hard at everything he does. So, you know, I just wish you the best.
It's not something I just want to do. It's part of the responsibility of the Secretary of State. There's one of the statutes requires or puts the Secretary of State in charge of this Committee on Participatory Democracy. I think that's what it's called. Committee on Participatory Democracy. And it's the responsibility of the Secretary of State to go out there and teach and educate and make sure that people have the passion to get involved and to find out why they're not getting involved and then to solve that.
Really?
And yes.
Who's done that as a Secretary of State?
Committee on Participatory Democracy, all right? Teach people on what American values are, why it's important to vote, why your vote matters.
Seen any Secretary of State do that.
Well, you're going to see one in a year.
So, what is the job description of the Secretary of State for the state of Nevada?
Wow. Well, I can't rattle off the top of my head, but I actually have the sheet directly from the website. I mean, I could read it or I could paraphrase. I mean,
read and paraphrase.
Read and paraphrase.
So,
essentially,
in the world I work in, so give me your core roles.
Because a lot of people don't know what the heck a Secretary of State is.
Right.
They just know they're just voting down the line.
Let's just give some of the duties, some of the highlights. So first of all, as it says here, the Secretary of State
lives in Carson City.
Is the third highest ranking official in the state of Nevada.
So one below the Lieutenant Governor, right?
Exactly.
It's the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State.
Exactly.
So if the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor, something happens to them, the Secretary of State becomes the Governor.
Well, in theory,
right? Theory.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that.
Right. I'm just saying, hypothetically.
We don't want to think about something bad happened to somebody.
I'm just saying the way the ranks are aligned.
That's the
order of a session.
Right. No, I get it. So constitutional and statutory duties, it's pretty simple. I mean, you certify statewide candidates and ballot questions, right? You certify primary and general election results. You supervise state and local elections, all right? You're the chief election officer in the state of Nevada for federal and state elections, all right? You register and file candidate contribution and expense report. We went over that. You're in charge of licensing and registration of businesses, including collection of license fees and everything that goes along with that. You're in charge of registering and monitoring the registration of trade name, trademarks, professional corporations, associations. You're in charge of the record keeping for the Uniform Commercial Code. And I mentioned some of these other things, securities, notary publics. I like a lot of these commissions and committees that you get to sit on. You can do some really great work beyond some of those other responsibilities. The State Board of Prison Commissioners, State Board of Examiners, Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, State Records Committee, State Advisory Committee on Participatory Democracy, the one I mentioned, Executive Branch Audit Committee. There's several other things. This is just, when you're talking about supervising state and local elections, most of that's in Chapter 293 of the Election Code. I mean, there's a lot of minutia in there. There's a lot of detail, lot of ambiguity, a lot of room for interpretation, a lot of room for the Secretary of State to interpret these laws in a way that's going to best achieve, right, our goal of election integrity.
So you're in charge of business entities, right? Every business
entities. Well, right. You have the business portal. You have the forms. You supervise the filings of the articles of incorporation. You make sure things are done properly. You're reviewing the election of shares that are issued. You're supervising and monitoring registration of partnerships. You're determining the appropriate fees and assessing the fees and collecting. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The things that you're responsible for. And these responsibilities are not to be taken lightly because you need to protect the consumer, right? And you protect the consumer by making sure that the businesses that are registering are lawful businesses in our state.
What if
you look at their qualifications?
So what if there's a business already registered? Let's call it Samuel's Pizzeria, right? And they've been there for years, and they registered with the Secretary of State, right? Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, another entity come. It's called Samuel's Pizzeria, which same exact name.
Yeah.
Do you guys red flag that?
You can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that because you got to go on. You got to go online. I mean, what most people do is you go online and you reserve your name, and then your name's there reserved for you once you form your business entity, form your organization, form your club, and then file your papers and get the name.
Is there something in the Secretary of State computer system that red flags that, saying that there's a duplicate name has already been taken? Choose something else? Because I don't remember seeing that.
Well, you can you can actually go on the Secretary of State portal, type in the name, and it'll give you. It'll go up. It'll come up and show you all the names. A lot of them are close but not exact. You can have the Silver State Voting Coalition, and someone could come up and have the Silver State Voting Committee. You can have similar names. There's nothing wrong with it. You can't have the same exact name. It's going to be red flagged. It's going to be obvious. It's going to come up on a search. Or you can't do that. Have you submit a request that I investigate that. I'll look into it for you.
Because I experienced that. Yeah.
If you have a particular example, we'll take care of it for you.
Okay. I experienced that before. The name, one name is already existing. Somebody comes and tries to piggyback on that name.
If you're using one name and then you default, all right, then you lose the right to use that name. So someone else can pick up that name. Okay. Now that's a situation I think you're familiar with.
So what happens if somebody has a name that they defaulted on and somebody else pick it up?
Yeah, you can do that.
But then they come around and they get a pack with that same name.
So you have a corporation and then another PAC, both using the same name.
Exactly. The corporation and the PAC has the same name, but different people runs both of them.
I think you finally got me. I don't know the answer to that one, to be honest to you.
Yeah, look into that.
Well, I can't give you an advisory opinion, but I'll look into it and just for future reference if it comes up.
You've got a campaign to run.
I don't know the answer to that one. That's a good question.
Yeah. Because I'm going to ask you in the near future about that.
Okay.
See if
I'm not going to give you an answer if it affects you directly, because that wouldn't be fair.
It doesn't matter. It's something that the people should know, that if you have a corporation, you can't go undermine the corporation because they won't let you in, and create a PAC with the same exact name.
Yeah. It seems unfair,
which is Political Action Committee for those people that don't know.
Yeah. But I don't know the law on that. Yeah. So I'll look into that for you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe next time I'm here, I don't know when you're going to have me after hopefully, I'll win the primary, then I'll be glad to come back, and then maybe I'll have the answer for you.
We're going to have you for the endorsement interview. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
what's that group that was always telling me, don't go talk to Steve Sanson?
Yeah,
what was that group? Are they still around? What is that group? Are they going to come out?
They're in some deep crapola right now. So,
okay.
They're being sued for slander, defamation, all kinds of craziness is going on.
Because that wasn't right. You shouldn't attack somebody just for wanting to go and participate in an endorsement interview that is neutral and objective.
They threaten judges, and I don't hear law enforcement screaming, breaking down their doors to at least get their statement. Why are you threatening judges for? What kind of threats are you planning on doing?
All right.
How many people, by the way, do you interview each cycle? You interview a lot, don't you?
A lot.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to ask another question because we're getting.
Ask another. This is his time to shine.
We're running. No. We're running. We're getting pretty long on time here, but actually, I guess I'll phrase it in a form of a question instead of making a statement.
Okay.
Since I've been so nice to you this whole time, Richard.
a tough question. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. No, this one's really brutal. So speaking of what you two were just talking about, as far as that group, and I'm not going to even mention their name on air. Yeah, they were threatening a lot of judges. And some of the judges running for re-election used COVID as an excuse, or, rationale. That's fine. I'll just say rationale, because I don't want to attack anybody. Like, they had their reasons.
Chicken shit is what I say.
Yeah. All right. So as usual, I'm going to be a good cop. He'll be bad cop. Anyway, sometimes we switch back and forth. But so that group, I'm pretty sure probably contacted you too, when you were running judge. But you know what? You still came in. So that speaks to integrity. Why were you willing to do that and some of your other colleagues weren't, now that you're not on the bench anymore?
Well, you know what?
When somebody, or fortunately, when you win this election.
When somebody disrespects me and attacks my character and attacks my credibility and threatens me, and they do it in an unfair, inappropriate, illegal manner, and it harasses me, that's going to make me want to fight more. I'm not going to back down. I'm going to fight. I'm going to stand up for my honor, as each of us here would do, right? So they do that to me? No, it didn't even cross my mind not to come and interview with you guys.
You know what? I thought about this many years ago, and piggyback on what you're saying. I remember I got into a fight in the bar. It was in Okinawa, Japan.
Okay.
And this guy, I think he was another Marine, said some stupid crap. So I was beating him, right? And then he goes, "I'm so sorry." I couldn't hit him anymore. It just took the wind right out of me. But if he was to say, "F you, come on," then I would hit him some more. But the fact that he just backed off and said that he was sorry, I couldn't do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with what Jim was saying, if they apologize for their action, then there's no fault, no foul. But if they keep on with it,
apologize and go away.
Yeah, if they keep on with it, then
I don't even want an
apology.
I just want them to just realize their mistake and stop doing it.
And who's still here? We are. No matter all that,
where they are,
all that crap, all that baloney, and all that stuff, we still prevail. And
thank God.
Who are these people?
Yeah.
And that's what I tell everybody. It happens every single election year. People try to take out VIPI because they know that we're doing a good job, and they know that we're exposing the corruption within our state. And a lot of people cannot handle that. So they try to isolate and discredit, and they do it all the time.
All right. Well, you're doing good work. That's what I've told people in the public.
Do you have anything more for Mr. Scotti?
No, other than just the fact that I appreciate you coming in. And
it's fun.
Did we cover everything?
And I got to bust your chops on one thing, though, Richard, man.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It's been a long day. You're the only one that could get me here on a Tuesday evening.
Yeah, we don't normally shoot shows on Tuesdays. Usually Wednesday, Saturdays.
Steve was like, "Hey," and I'm like, "What?" And then when he said it was you, I was like, "All right, for Richard, I'll do it."
I appreciate it.
And speaking of apologies, I owe you an apology for years ago. That whole chairman thing got out of control.
Oh man, that's water under the bridge.
Yeah, I was gonna say that got a little out of control.
I can't think that far back.
Yeah.
Mrs. Scotti, is there something that we didn't cover that you want to cover?
I don't know. I got all these papers here, but we could go on for hours.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you get us three around a table, look out.
Yeah. No, all I can say is there's a lot of work. I want to do as much hard work as possible to make sure that we rescue the Constitution and restore election integrity, be as inclusive as possible in bringing people to the polls, but be guarded and to make sure that it's those that are citizens that come in to vote. Our democracy depends upon it. Our republic depends upon it. We're going to prevail.
You're kind of ahead of me because I usually say this.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on the program, Mr. Scotti. Could you look into the camera and tell people why they should consider you, vote for you, support your candidacy to be the next Secretary of State for this great state of Nevada? What's your point of contact, please?
Fantastic. Well, so because I said all the reasons why you should vote for me, right? I don't want to repeat it. All right. Well, very good. So I have a website going up tomorrow morning, www.richardscotti.com. My email is richard@richardscotti.com. I appreciate your support. I'm going to work hard for you, and I'm going to make sure that we improve election integrity and make sure that I'm faithful to the responsibilities of the office. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard Scotti. Folks, that's Richard Scotti, former Clark County District Court judge, candidate for Nevada Secretary of State. This guy is awesome. He's just awesome. That's all I'm going to say. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.